Hello, everybody. Welcome to today's webinar, Learn the Secrets of Dynamics 365 CRM Business Management Features and How to Improve Your Sales. Today, we'll talk about the key elements of business management functionality for Microsoft Dynamics 365 CRM, and we'll learn about business closures and how to handle regular business and holiday hours within CRM to prevent misscheduling resources. We'll learn about goal metrics and how you can tell the system how to calculate and monitor your sales and service activities effectively. We'll cover sales territories and how to manage your sales team to avoid conflicts and duplicated effort and to improve sales potential and revenues. And then we'll cover resource groups and how to most effectively manage scheduling of service technicians, other CRM users, facilities, and equipment. And finally, we'll get to automated processes and update rules to improve the efficiency of your sales, marketing, and service teams. I am Brian Dunn, Director of Marketing at Quanta CRM. And with me today is Miriam Florio, Senior Consultant. And without further delay, I will turn the controls over to Miriam.
Thanks, Brian. So I'm logged into Dynamics 365 as an administrator, so I have the rights to go into the back end of the system and set up things like business closures, modify security settings, look at goal metrics, etc. So make sure that you have those rights in your system in order to view the information that we're going to be looking at right now. So let's start off with going to the back end right here, and I'm going to go to Settings and Business Management. You can also go, if you have the module for Service Management, to Service Management and perform some of these same actions as they take you to the same place in the system to set up some of the changes. So we're going to go to Business Management and first take a look at Business Closures. So as I click on Business Closures, I'm going to see beneath there's a description. It says create a list of holidays and other times when the business is closed. So that makes sense. We want to make sure that the system knows about any closures that we might have as a business privately. So that might be something like we're going to be doing a remodeling job for 1 week and we'll be closed. We can enter that as a business closure. You can also enter in holidays that are national holidays, holidays that you might observe as a company or some of your users might observe at your organization. So right now you can see I have 2016 business closures shown here. I could scroll back to 2015, I could go to 2016 and look at those and then actually move forward through the years. But you can see for 2016 we don't have any business closures listed. So I can add a business closure to the system by clicking New. And let's just go ahead and, in the spirit of things, since it's December, we're going to add in the Christmas business closure. And you could do this, it could be a couple of days, it could be for, let's say, Christmas Eve and Christmas. Of course, they're on a weekend this year, but you get the idea. Your business might run 7 days a week. So we'll just say Christmas Day, and we'll choose the 25th, and the end time is the 25th. It's an all-day event. If you don't make it an all-day event, you can choose the hours. So let's say we're just closed early on a day, or half the day, you're doing a partial day, or certain hours were closed, then of course you could specify the hours there. Normally for business closures, in most cases, they are all-day events. So I'm going to go ahead and click OK. And you can see here there is information that's being shown. It says during this closure, service activities cannot be scheduled. However, resources with the Do Not Observe option selected for business closures can be scheduled for services. So it's important to remember that there are exceptions to these business closure rules. And then, of course, you can just continue to add them. So that might, like I said, it might be several days. It could be a holiday stretch, etc. And you get the idea. You can add those all in here for the year. So now that these are business closures are set up in the system, of course, when you're going to schedule your resources, it will observe those business closures, it will show those on the calendar, and therefore it'll prevent you from scheduling anything during a time when you might not be open. And so people don't need to be, your users don't need to be mindful when they're scheduling things. They can just simply rely on the system to observe these closures, unless, of course, you're under that rule where you're doing the Do Not Observe option there. So this will just help prevent any scheduling when really when users or services or even facilities shouldn't be scheduled. So let's go back a level, go back to business management. Let's just take a look at other things that are set up here. We're not going over a lot of these today in detail. Of course, there are a lot of other options here. You can set up your fiscal year settings. Most people have fiscal year ending end of year, but if your fiscal year might be different, you can set those up in the system. Next thing, we're going to look at our goal metrics. So it's how to define and manage goals that your organization tracks. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that. And you can see there are a couple of metrics that are set up in our system here for us that have already been defined. And you could, of course, add as many as you want to the system. And really, the goal metrics are the way that the system defines how something is calculated. So what do I mean by that? You can see here in the case of revenue, let's just double click on this, or of course, I could select it and edit it either way. And you want to make sure you activate these. You can see the status is active. But you can also deactivate, so you can make some changes. So we can go ahead and do that. Deactivate the role. And if you remember with everything in the system, when you deactivate something, it then makes it more editable, or it gives you the ability to change it further than it would if something is active and already in play in the system. So you can see here that we have this revenue goal metric, and it's really the way the system's defining what revenue is. And so for your company, that might be different than for another organization. And so you can see here the metric type is an amount. So we're just saying this is a total dollar amount. We're not talking the number of opportunities. That's not how we define our revenue. We're really defining it on total dollars. And so that metric type is amount. For other metrics you can add into the system, you might have a metric that totals up how many leads you have, or let's say how many potential sales you have in the pipeline, and that might be a metric you want to calculate, and that's not a bad idea. You can have that as well, and you would set that metric type to count instead of amount there. So for this particular one, amount is good. Amount data type is money. Of course, that's currency, so that's what we want it to be. And you can track your stretch targets as well. You can see here that the goal metric is for revenue is defined as actual money, so actual revenue, that's 1, and also in progress money for estimated revenue, that's open. So these are the 2 roll-up fields that are available to us for the goal metric. And if I actually click into one of these roll-up fields, for those of you that don't know what roll-up fields are, roll-up fields actually take a specific field in any entity that's you're able to calculate on. So it's either a quantity, it's usually a number, or a currency, and you can take that and roll it up or sum it up to a different level. And so what I mean by that, an example of a roll-up field is for your opportunities, you might have all of the actual revenues rolling up to your account level to show you the actual dollars or actual revenue for that account. And so we could take all those revenue fields from the opportunities and roll them up to the account and show that or display that on that page. And also you can put it into list views, etc., dashboards, wherever you want to see that rolled up amount. And so those are the roll up fields that we would set up. On that case, on the account level, we'd add that roll up field where it's taking the opportunities and rolling it up to that level, which makes sense. We don't want it to be a granular roll up. Okay, so now that we're looking at the roll up field, you can see the roll up field is the actual money. The source record type is opportunity. The source field it's running on is actual revenue. You have other fields here that it could run on. If you notice here, it's going to show us only currencies or amounts. So it's not letting us use other values because really you can't do much with a text field or let's say with a list option set, drop down, etc. So this makes sense here. Actual revenue, of course, you could change it to total amount if that were a field that you were using on your system instead of actual revenue. We're using actual revenue as the best field for this, and source record type is 1. You could use the status here if you want, set that to 1 as well. Really just depends on how your users use the system and how you enforce the rules. Record type opportunity, and this is an interesting one. Step 3 is specify the date field that determines the goal period. So when we're looking at these goals, we're saying these are the goals for 2016, or these are the goals for a certain year. When it's splitting them up across the board, it wants to know what date field to use. And so that could be the created end date. So you might just really be worried about when your users created that opportunity. Maybe it's when they actually closed it. That's more important to you. So it really depends on how you as an organization track those or see the dates. And some folks like to think it's when they're created because that's really how they're measuring the productivity of the sales team. But close dates could also be indicative more of actual sales for that quarter or that period. So just want to show you that real quick. Let's just close this, navigate away from here. And of course, you can see the roll-up fields that we just looked at, the description, etc. So these goal metrics can be set up across the board, across the entities, and generally they have to do with cases or they have to do with opportunities, information that's being calculated there that you want to later on report on or use as metrics against other data in the system, or just as for totaling really. So let's just close that up. So you can set up new ones by clicking new. Of course, we can reactivate the revenue one that we just opened by clicking activate. And that'll make it ready to use. There's another one in here, number of cases. We could just look at that really quick and you can see that it's a count one. So a little different than the opportunity one. This is just giving us a total count of the cases and it has the same type of attributes to it as the previous goal metric that we looked at. This one is actually looking at the number of cases or service tickets that we have in the system. Of course, it's looking at those that are resolved, and same thing, it will have date associated with it, etc. if we drill into that. So these goal metrics could be really nice for reporting purposes. Management really finds these things helpful, and of course you can add in as many as you want. You can also add in cross metrics. So what I mean by that is you might have one metric, which is the number of cases. You might have another metric that has to do with your, let's say it's the total number of lost cases. So you can have more than one metric per entity or per type, if you will. So you're not set to one single metric per entity or per property that you're looking at. You can set up as many as you want there. Okay, so we're going to go back up to business management. And we're going to take a look at the sales territories. So you can see we looked at goal metrics, business closures. There's also cues you can use for managing resource groups, facilities. We'll talk about that in a minute. And let's go into sales territories. So sales territories are really geographic territories that we're defining for our users or our sales team to belong to. And so these sales territories can then also be set on accounts. They can be set on your opportunities, etc., to define what value they're going into. So we have here, you can see the territories that are set up in this system are global. So we have Africa, Asia Pacific, all the way down to the US, and covering other continents and countries. So this might not apply to your business. You might set up territories such as your territory might be the US split up into 3 different territories. You could have US East, US West, and US Mid region, for example. You could have Canada as another territory. You might have the United States and Canada just separated. You might have a small European branch. So you can set them up as granular as you want. They could be down to states. Just remember that when you're setting up these territories, and let's just go into one of them, we'll go into Asia Pacific, that I have members that belong to the territories, and these are my users. So these are my Dynamics 365 users that I have assigned to the territories. Keep in mind that users can only belong to one territory. So if you're going to have members inside of the territories, the users can only belong to one. So if you don't want to get too granular in that you're saying that Alan Steiner belongs to Asia Pacific instead, if you wanted to say the Philippines, it might be smarter to put him into a broader territory, like a wider thing that's covering all of Asia rather than a specific country if that's really the territory that Alan belongs to. So keep that in mind. You can always talk to your success coach here at Quanta CRM in order to get more details or better recommendations on how to set up these territories and use them in the system later for everything from reporting to slicing and dicing the data, and also keeping everything separated between the users. So really a lot of uses for these territories. Of course, you don't need to use territories. They're not required in the system, so keep that in mind and map something special out before you deploy the territories, just to make sure that you're not making a big mistake in the beginning when you're setting them up. It's nice to set them up properly to start with and then use them efficiently and effectively throughout the system moving forward. Okay, so let's just go ahead and close this territory up. And of course, to add new territories, you could simply click New and add in the territory name. And there's really not much you need to worry about here. The manager would be the manager of the territory that would be assigning leads to the territory, for example. So if I'm setting up a territory and I have a territory manager, and that manager could be the manager of multiple territories, that would be the user that would go in and then, let's say, distribute a set of leads to all of their different territories or different users across the system. So you would specify from this lookup one of your users to be the manager for the territory. So let's go back to business management. And we'll take a look at a few more of these items here. So resource groups are really a way for you to set up your service technicians, CRM users, facilities and equipment, and other items in the system. Let's just take a look at facilities and equipment and give it a brief overview. So we can add facilities and equipment in the system for scheduling, and what you'll see here is we have set up a company car in the system, so I can add in different pieces of equipment or facilities in the system in order for my users to use and allocate, let's say during certain hours or times or a day throughout the system. It's really a way for you to schedule or take out. If you remember the olden days with the library cards to take books out, do the same thing with the facilities and equipment here. So we've got company car here that the users could use. We have one of them. Of course, you can set up more. Let's add in a conference room into facilities and equipment. So we'll say, and you might have several conference rooms, but this is a good way for scheduling. So we'll say conference room A. And of course, you could choose the site of your conference room. If you don't have sites set up or you're not using them, you can leave that blank. Coordinated universal time is fine. And we could say room holds 12 people comfortably and has buffet for food. So we could set that up as a description and then save and close that resource. What that'll essentially do is add that to the system so that users can book that resource or use it, put it onto schedules and calendars. And of course, the facilities and equipment can also honor those business closures, et cetera, so you can keep them open as resources. And you can add in as many as you want here. Okay, so let's just take a look at resource groups now that we're just below there. Facilities and equipment was above. And resource groups are a really way to add groups and members to existing groups for service scheduling, updating group information, and it's a way for you to also add members to the groups. So I have a group here called Field Techs that I added, so I can have all my users in certain groups and then use these groups for scheduling later. So I can go into my Field Tech group. And I can add in my resources here. So I can add my users, for example. You can also add facilities and equipment. You can add in a whole resource group or team members at a time. So if you already have a team set up, you can do that. Another type of resource group you might add in here, let's say you have a certain customer service AM team, you have a customer service PM team, and you want to set those up as a resource group for something. A lot of times it's users that might be going out in the field or a set of individuals that work outside of regular business hours. So that's just like we have the field tech set up. You might have other technicians or QA people that work different hours or weekend hours, let's say. You could add them to their own resource group. Of course, you want to publish that and set it up in the system for use in scheduling efficiently, effectively later. It just is a nice thing to set up for your users so that you don't need to individually go into, let's say, a specific user's calendar and change things around or set up tasks for users individually or appointments. You can set up something for the whole group, and it makes it a lot easier to use the system. And of course, you can add in as many as you want here. You can also remove old groups. Okay, and then lastly, let's just talk about automated processes. Just go up here to settings, and you can go to the process center. And there are some processes that are already in here, but let's talk about the way that we can use processes, workflows in the system that can automate things and make our system more efficient for sales, marketing, etc. So what Dynamics 365 can do out of the box, and is pretty easy for users to set up, is let's say set off an automatic email. And that can be when, let's say, we get a service ticket in or a case in the system. We might have an automatic process that sends a workflow that would send an email to the user that reported the problem, that would be your customer. Usually it could be an internal user as well that reported the problem, that says, we've received your case, this is your case number. Of course, that could be running off of a template that you have set up inside of Dynamics that would then populate, put in the case details, maybe who's working on that ticket for them, give them an estimated completion time, and might even ask them some questions on that email. And so you can set that up as an automated process. Another type of process you might use for cases, which really the processes really benefit a lot, is that you might set up an email box at your business that is complaints@yourcompany.com or problems@yourcompany.com that your customers can then email. And what the system would do is then pick up or pull that email box and automatically create cases for you. And so that subject line could be the description of the case or the ticket that's coming in, and it would take the from email address located in your system and attach it to or set regarding on that record, etc. And so we can set up a lot of processes that really make handling problems for your customers more efficient and effective. On the other hand, for sales and marketing, you can also take things like, let's say, a lead list and automatically email all those leads with a drip marketing campaign that would send out an email on day one once the leads were entered, and then follow through. Let's say day 3 that the lead is in the system, it does a subsequent email that comes from their assigned sales manager or owner of the record. And then day 5, they would receive a second email that would come in. It says something different. And so you can continue down that drip campaign. And of course, that can include phone calls. It doesn't have to all be emails, but it can be a set of steps that occur to really bring those leads in. And you can figure out after analysis what becomes the most efficient and effective method for your type of customer, your customer base, in order to target them well. And so a lot of this processes, and most of this you can figure out if you look at our old Lunch and Learns, quantacrm.com/events. You can look at some of these processes more in action. We have a workflow webinar that we did a while back where you can see in more detail how to set up these processes in your system. And of course, if you want to set something up that's a little more complicated, perhaps integrates in with your company's website, request for information or request for quote that you'd like to flow through into Dynamics 365, your QuantaCRM Success Coach could help you with that. So hopefully that was helpful. And Brian, I think I'm ready for any questions that might be coming in.
Okay.
If there are any.
Yep, I will take a quick look here. Okay, there's a couple that have come in while you're talking, but now is the time. If anyone has questions, please type them into the question box in your GoToWebinar control panel, and we will answer those in the order they come in. And I'll start with the first question. What if parts of my company don't observe the holidays and are always in session? Will setting up business closures mess this up?
So you can actually set up your resources, which resources include users, to not observe business closures if you want. That's really probably the most effective way to do that. So if you just want to have them follow their own schedule, then I would suggest that you have them not observe the business closures and just continue on with regular scheduling. If you need to make modifications to their individual schedules, you can do that later, but that do not observe option would probably be the way to go.
Okay, the second question that had come in, what if we don't want to count sample sales and our outside sales opportunities as wins?
Okay, so I think that's referring to the goal metrics. So for the goal metrics, you can actually set them up however you want. And so when we looked at the revenue before, it said that it was just anything that was one. You could set up a goal metric with maybe a more specific filter on it that would say that, I don't know how you identify your samples, but perhaps you have an opportunity type field where you're saying that identifies the sample, that it happens to be a sample sale, or perhaps if you have a checkbox on there. If you don't, I would recommend an easy way to identify which ones are those samples. And then you can exclude those from your metric by adding in a filter to say that, where the opportunity is 1 and it's not, the type is not equal to sample. So, and I'm assuming those are $0 amounts, but they might have shipping on them, so that might not be the best way to catch it is by the dollar. But perhaps if there's a type there, or if you just want to exclude the $0 ones, there are a few ways to accomplish that, but you can certainly honor excluding the sample sales.
Okay, next question. What if we work with an outside individual, such as our marketing person, who doesn't exist in CRM, but we would like to reference them or schedule them out? How could we do that?
So if your marketing person doesn't exist in CRM and you kind of want them to act like a CRM user, there are maybe a couple workarounds for that. One way to do this is probably to set up a facility or equipment, and I put that in quotes with that individual's name. So really you're identifying them as a piece of equipment or something that's not actually a person or user in your system, but it's a way for you to see their name up here. And so in that facilities list, you could add them in there, and then also use that for scheduling. You can also have that, not observe holidays, etc. So there are a few ways to accomplish it. I would discuss it with your success coach, give them a little more detail on how they might need to use the system. You could always use a downgraded or lower license for that user. That's pretty nominal fee, depending on what information they need to access or if they need to access anything at all.
Okay. Another one came in. So we have an employee who works Monday through Thursday. How would we set up CRM so that it would reflect or know this?
Okay, so you definitely don't want to use business closures in order to set up an individual user's working hours. What you can do is under the settings, security, users, pull up the user, and you can actually set up their work hours. And so if you go to the top of the screen and click on the drop-down menu, you'll see that work hours exist there. Once you go into the work hours, you can actually set up what days they work. You can even say what times they work. And so for each user, you can do that on a user-by-user basis. And then when there's something that's common throughout the, for all users, let's say Saturdays and Sundays are business closures, you can set something like that up as a business closure. But for individuals that are a little different than others, I would use the work hours on their user record in order to identify when they're actually working or the days that they're actually working.
Okay. I see no other questions at this time, so I'm going to go ahead and wrap up now. There we go. So to wrap up, I'd just like to thank everyone for attending today. I know your time is valuable, so hopefully you found the information we presented valuable too. If you have any questions that come up after we end the presentation, please feel free to reach out to us at 844-244-6310. That's 844-244-6310. We would love to hear from you. Again, today's presentation was recorded and will be posted to quantascrm.com/events later today. So if you missed some details or if you know someone you think might benefit from the presentation, you can find the recorded webinar there. Again, I'd like to thank everyone for attending and wish you all a great day.
Thanks, everybody.